Hey everyone, recently I made a very long video outlining everything that's wrong with RFK Jr., the massive fraud currently in charge of American public health. At the end of the video, I alluded to the fact that I'd have to keep checking in as he does more insane things, and it's already time for some of that, so let's get into it. In my lengthy video covering all the background information on Bobby, we spent a long time talking about vaccines and autism and how there is absolutely zero correlation between them, despite the insistence from delusional anti-vaxxers and the charlatans who feed them this narrative. But Bobby can't be stopped. He's on a crusade. He's long been claiming that he is going to find the cause of autism. It doesn't matter that he has no idea what autism is, or any awareness of what we already know about autism, or how it presents and when, or how it's diagnosed, or how it's treated, or anything like that. Bobby doesn't need to know any of that shit. He is that smart. Of course, Trump has been rooting him on from the sidelines like a crooked bookie at the dog track, and guess what? They've done it. Those beautiful bastards have done it.
I think we found an answer to autism. How about that? Autism. Tomorrow, we're going to be talking in the Oval Office in the White House about autism, how it happens, so we won't let it happen anymore. Because obviously there was something really wrong, and we think we know what that is. I think it's going to be one of the most important news conferences I'll ever have.
Yes, this turning point tirade is Trump capitalizing on the Charlie Kirk assassination for a number of political reasons, and this little tidbit was just thrown in there for good measure. So that's it. Trump and RFK have autism all figured out, and they're going to make sure that autism doesn't exist anymore. Whether it's through revolutionary healthcare or eugenics, do we really even care? Now, to be clear, Trump has been tweeting about autism for quite some time. Here he is all the way back in 2012. It's vaccines. Of course, there is no big increase in autism, and vaccines definitely, objectively, conclusively do not cause autism, but to Trump, it's vaccines. Case closed. Keep that in mind for later. Now moving on to 2014. Healthy young child goes to doctor, gets pumped with massive shot of many vaccines, doesn't feel good, and changes. Autism. Many such cases. Yeah, many such cases, zero such cases. What's the difference? It's blatantly obvious that beyond having no clue how vaccines work or even what they are, Trump doesn't seem to know what autism is. He thinks it's something that you can catch, that it makes you change your entire disposition on a dime, and that a symptom of autism is not feeling good. Autism isn't the fucking flu, dumbass. Fortunately, back then he was just some jerk on the internet rather than the commander-in-chief of the premier global superpower. Now here's another from earlier this year. 20 years ago, autism in children was 1 in 10,000. Now it's 1 in 34. Wow! Something's really wrong. We need Bobby. Thank you, DJT. So that's a bunch of horse shit. In 2010, the prevalence rate was 1 in 68, and in 2000, it was 1 in 150. So he's pulling the number 10,000 directly out of his asshole. But more importantly, citing the amount of people diagnosed with autism does not necessarily reflect the number of people who actually have autism. You have to look at how autism is diagnosed and how that has changed over time. For context, take something like schizophrenia. This was first formally described and diagnosed in 1887. Does that mean that prior to 1887, nobody on Earth had schizophrenia? Of course not. The same proportion of people had it then as today. We simply had zero understanding of the condition, and those who were afflicted were just locked up in mental institutions and left there to rot like livestock. The same goes for autism. There was a time when this word didn't even exist, while autistic people did. The definition of autism has changed over the years, which is why the prevalence rates have changed. When you change how autism is defined in a way that suddenly includes dramatically more people who were not considered autistic before, then all of a sudden there are more people who can be diagnosed as autistic. They didn't magically turn autistic just because our definition of autism changed. Prior to the 1980s, autistic behavior was considered a form of childhood schizophrenia. In the DSM-3 in 1980, it was finally classified as a pervasive developmental disorder separate from schizophrenia. In 1987, for the DSM-3R, the definition broadened such that repetitive behaviors and communication difficulties were added as core features. This allowed more individuals to meet criteria. A brand new term, autism spectrum disorder, or ASD, showed up in the DSM-4 in 1994, so that's the first time that any kind of spectrum of autistic behaviors was even considered. And finally, in 2013, the DSM-5 consolidated all subtypes into a single diagnosis of autism spectrum disorder with well-defined severity levels. While it tightened some criteria, it kept the concept broad, spanning from profound disability to high-functioning autism. This information should be useful for people who don't know anything about autism or know anybody who is autistic. In stark contrast with the rhetoric of people like Trump, RFK, or Andrew Wakefield, not everyone with autism is totally nonverbal and flapping their hands around. There are 3 levels. Level 1 includes people who need some support as they demonstrate trouble recognizing social cues and engage in repetitive behaviors or restricted interests. That's all. Most people with this degree of autism are not recognizably autistic to people who don't know anything about autism, like Trump and RFK. Level 2 includes people who require substantial support given more pronounced difficulties with socialization, cognitive and behavioral rigidity, often accompanied by sensory processing disorders. This is due to reduced synaptic pruning that is supposed to begin around age 2. We are born with a tremendous amount of synaptic connections in the brain, and early in childhood development, a large proportion of the connections that go unused are trimmed. Autistic individuals exhibit a reduction of this synaptic pruning, leaving excessive synaptic connections, which causes their brains to work differently, and this is the reason they are often overstimulated and dysregulated. These issues can be mitigated through speech therapy, occupational therapy, behavioral therapy, and other such activities, and these individuals typically integrate into society successfully with the correct care. Then level 3 includes those that have severe difficulties with communication, often exhibiting little to no verbal language, and require assistance for most daily activities, often for their whole lives. Only a quarter of autistic people are level 3, and this is the only level that was recognized as autism until diagnostic criteria were refined such that levels 1 and 2 could be recognized, as these individuals had either been diagnosed differently or more often completely overlooked. The MCHAT, or Modified Checklist for Autism in Toddlers, is a set of screening tools published in 2001 that enabled earlier and more accurate identification of autism in younger children. Greater awareness of autism in general led to an increase in diagnoses, and in 2007, the American Academy of Pediatrics formally recommended that pediatricians begin incorporating standardized autism screening at 18 and 24-month well-child visits, leading to a rise in autism diagnosis and improved access to early intervention. And it is the case that the increase in diagnosis is associated exclusively with levels 1 and 2 autism. That was a lot of information, but the point is that the definition of autism broadened tremendously over 20 years, which means that way more people were included under the definition than were considered previously. There is no rise in autism. There is a rise in properly diagnosing autistic people. I will repeat for emphasis. There is no rise in autism. There is a rise in properly diagnosing autistic people. End of story. People who peddle hysteria about autism never, ever, under any circumstances, reference diagnostic criteria for autism and their history. And this is a dead giveaway that they are both lying through their teeth and have no fucking idea what they're talking about. In the description, I will link to the autism diagnostic criteria in the DSM-5 in case you'd like to read up on it. And I will also link to this paper describing the updated diagnostic classification, thereby providing relevant context. If you are concerned about autism, please learn more about what autism is and how it is diagnosed. Now, in a minute, we're going to dig into this press conference right out of a Twilight Zone episode, but since you all know the big news already, I won't avoid spoiling it right up top. These assholes are going to claim that autism is caused by Tylenol. In case you live under a rock and don't know what Tylenol is, it's a particular brand name associated with a generic drug that is referred to as acetaminophen in the US and Canada, or paracetamol in Europe and other places. It is an analgesic, which means pain reliever, and also an antipyretic, which means fever reducer. So it is used to reduce fever and treat mild to moderate pain from headaches, muscle aches, and other common temporary conditions. Check out this video from my pharmacology playlist if you want to learn more about this drug. that they refer to the substance as Tylenol rather than the generic names for the drug, as though other brands of the same drug magically don't cause autism, is quite alarming and indicative of the profound science illiteracy of this administration. But either way, this is a level of pseudoscience coming out of the White House that is baffling. This is not some random jerk ranting on Rumble, and it's not your run-of-the-mill climate change denial or whatever other crap that conservative politicians have promoted for decades. This is medical misinformation of the highest caliber, and it's coming from the President of the United States. For fuck's sake, just look at this lineup. Trump, RFK Jr., and Dr. Oz in the Oval Office acting like they have something important to say. These three clowns are lecturing us about science. Two of them are disgraced former television stars, and the third is some jerk with a brainworm and a famous last name. What the fuck is this reality? These are the people in charge of public health for all Americans. These are the frauds making decisions that will cost human lives. From repealing vaccine mandates in Florida to whatever this shit is. This is actually happening. The danger can't be overstated. I have no idea what to do other than go through the press conference point by point and crap all over the insane bullshit they're projectile vomiting, so let's get started with that now.
So I've been waiting for this meeting for 20 years, actually. And it's not that everything's 100% understood or known, but I think we've made a lot of strides.
Trump doesn't give two shits about autistic people. He and Bobby threw together this Tylenol insanity in 20 minutes between rounds of golf, and nothing they will say over the next hour will be accurate. Also, for how much anti-vaxxers whined about expedited research on COVID vaccines and how they needed to be further tested before rollout, even though they went through clinical trials, they sure are eager to announce this crap in a hurry.
And we actually met in my office, is it like 20 years ago, Bobby? It's probably 20 years ago in New York. I was a developer, as you probably heard, and I always had very strong feelings about autism and how it happened and where it came from.
Strong feelings. Trump doesn't need to know anything about human physiology or neuroanatomy or any other area of science. He knows things that scientists don't know just from his feelings. He's a sorcerer, you guys.
It's turning out that we understood a lot more than a lot of people who studied it, we think. And I say we think because I don't think they were really letting the public know what they knew.
Trump couldn't name a single section of the brain if his life depended on it. I don't think he could even point to the brain on a diagram of the human body. But not only does he know more than professionals who have researched autism their entire lives, he also implies that those researchers have been purposely hiding information from the public because reasons. The moron never disappoints.
The meteoric rise in autism is among the most alarming public health developments in history. There's never been anything like this. Just a few decades ago, 1 in 10,000 children had autism. So that's not a long time. And I've always heard, they say a few, but I think it's a lot less time than that. It used to be 1 in 20,000, then 1 in 10,000. And I would say that's probably 18 years ago. And now it's 1 in 31, but in some areas it's much worse than that, if you can believe it. 1 in 31. And I gave numbers yesterday. For boys, it's 1 in 12. I was told that's in California where they have for some reason, a more severe problem.
Bullshit, bullshit, bullshit. In 2000, it was 1 in 150 that were diagnosed with autism. He can point to studies all the way back in the 1960s and 70s to try and substantiate this figure of 1 in 10,000, but he's omitting all the important context anyway, mainly the change in diagnostic criteria. Let's say we decided that in order to qualify as tall, you have to be over 7 feet in height. That's less than 1 in a million people. Then let's say we change the definition of tall to include everyone over 6 feet in height. That's more like 1 in 30. Holy shit, look at how much taller humans suddenly got. It's an epidemic of tallness, you guys. No, we just changed what tall means. Just like we changed what autistic means, from only the small fraction of people that were severely autistic to what the word means today. You'd think this would be easy to understand, but here we are.
Because when you go from 20,000 to 10,000, and then you go to 12, you know there's something artificial. They're taking something. And by the way, I think I can say that there are certain groups of people that don't take vaccines and don't take any pills that have no autism.
No, you can't say that, because that's a lie. That's why you're not even attempting to substantiate this dumb lie you told. And for fuck's sake, you know they're taking something, there's something artificial? You know that how exactly? Real master of the scientific method over here. He knows it's a substance, and he knows it's artificial. Nature has never harmed anyone, right? This is what frauds do. They distort reality to create an imaginary problem, and then they manufacture a narrative that appears to address that imaginary problem in order to manipulate people into submitting to their propaganda out of fear. When you're a person with a brain, you look at data, and decades of peer-reviewed research immaculately explains the rise in autism diagnoses without invoking mystery substances. Diagnostic substitution, increased awareness, earlier screening, that's it. That's science.
That have no autism. Does that tell you something? That's currently, is that a correct statement, by the way?
There are some studies that suggest that, yeah, with the Amish, for example.
The Amish, yeah. Virtually, I heard none. See, Bobby wants to be very careful with what he says, and he should, but I'm not so careful with what I say.
Yes, Donald, we know that you just open your dumb mouth and let absolutely anything tumble out of it. You don't have to remind us. But sorry, this no autism for the Amish bullshit has been debunked to smithereens. A 2008 study in the Journal of Autism and Developmental Disorders, as well as a 2011 study in the Journal of Child Neurology, both examined autism rates in Amish and non-Amish populations and found no difference. Same with ADHD. Left to their own devices, autism and ADHD are underreported because from a cultural standpoint, they avoid traditional healthcare services unless it's a broken leg or something life-threatening, certainly not psychological or neurological evaluation. So any claims of a particular Amish community having no autistic people is really just remarking that all the autistic people in that community haven't been diagnosed. Are we recognizing a pattern here? Avoiding autism diagnosis doesn't mean that autistic people don't exist. It's like pretending there's no crime in a city because there's no police to charge and arrest all the criminals. Also, plenty of Amish people get vaccines too, so any attempt to claim that link goes out the window here as well. And when they don't vaccinate, they experience outbreaks. In 2014, 383 kids got measles in Ohio, and in 2005, 345 got pertussis in Delaware. Amish people aren't magic. They get sick just like everyone else, and far more so when they avoid modern life-saving protocol.
First, effective immediately, the FDA will be notifying physicians that the use of well, let's see how we say that. Acetaminophen. Is that okay?
Jesus Christ, the fucking guy can't even get the word out of his mouth, and he's making claims about what it does that are completely unsupported. This asshole came out here knowing he would have to say that word, and he didn't even practice it. He's even more arrogant than he is stupid.
Which is basically commonly known as Tylenol. During pregnancy can be associated with a very increased risk of autism. So taking Tylenol is not good. All right, I'll say it. It's not good.
Dazzle us with your vocabulary, oh great leader. It's not good. If you take it while you're pregnant, it's not good. So let's shame all the women with autistic children who took Tylenol during pregnancy into thinking they caused their child's autism. That's totally an ethical thing to do. And then let's try and scare currently pregnant women into avoiding Tylenol if they have a fever, so that they can keep their fever up and put the fetus in actual legitimate danger. Mark my words, the use of antipyretics during pregnancy will go down because of what this asshole is saying. Pregnant women will have more pronounced fevers for longer, and that will result in a rise in miscarriage and birth defects.
For this reason, they are strongly recommending that women limit Tylenol use during pregnancy unless medically necessary. That's, for instance, in cases of extremely high fever, that you feel you can't tough it out, you can't do it. I guess there's that. It's a small number of cases, I think. But if you can't tough it out, if you can't do it, that's what you're going to have to do. You'll take a Tylenol, but it'll be very sparingly. It can be something that's very dangerous to the woman's health. In other words, a fever that's very, very dangerous, and ideally a doctor's decision, because I think you shouldn't take it. And you shouldn't take it during the entire pregnancy. They may tell you that toward the end of the pregnancy, you shouldn't take it during the entire. And you shouldn't give the child a Tylenol every time he's born and he goes and has a shot. You shouldn't give a Tylenol to that child.
Slow down, Donald. I'm trying to take detailed notes and I can barely keep up. So a pregnant woman should only take Tylenol if the fever is extremely high? Did you want to give me a number there? No? Do you even know what a fever is? Do you know what a normal body temperature is? Are you worried that if pressed you'd throw out a number like 85 and everyone would laugh at your dumb face? And again, you're shaming women with dangerous fevers for not being able to tough it out when they are faced with risking the life of their unborn child. Oh, and let's not give little kids Tylenol either, because they're still undergoing embryonic development when they're 10 years old. Can you even attempt to have any semblance of logical consistency when you speak?
The other thing that I can tell you that I'll say that they will maybe say at a little bit later date, but I think when you go for the shot, you do it over a 5-time period. Take it over 5 times or 4 times, but you take it in smaller doses and you spread it out over a period of years. And they pump so much stuff into those beautiful little babies, it's a disgrace.
Which shot? What the fuck are you talking about? Pump so much what into babies? What's in vaccines, Donald? I'll give you $1 million if you can tell me one ingredient in literally any vaccine. And you want to arbitrarily take some unspecified vaccine and just divide the contents into 5 parts and administer them over several years? Do you have any fucking clue what that would do to the efficacy of the vaccine? No attempt to cite a particular substance that he thinks is harmful, no attempt to justify this idiotic new protocol he pulled out of his ass. It's just astounding.
I don't see it. I think it's very bad. They're pumping, it looks like they're pumping into a horse. You have a little child, little fragile child, and you get a vat of 80 different vaccines, I guess, 80 different blends, and they pump it in.
A vat of 80 different vaccines being pumped into a horse? How the fuck do you even respond to shit like this? Vaccines aren't all mixed together in a vat. Nobody gets 80 vaccines anywhere ever. Humans and horses get a lot of the same types of vaccines because we are susceptible to a lot of the same diseases. The dosage of every vaccine is arrived at scientifically and proven to be safe. How are there no repercussions for a sitting president saying shit like this?
Ideally, a woman won't take Tylenol. And on the vaccines, it would be good instead of one visit where they pump the baby, load it up with stuff. You'll do it over a period of 4 times or 5 times.
So, are we worried about embryonic development or early childhood development? Can you make up your goddamn mind? And does this asshole think that the entire childhood vaccine schedule is implemented on the same day? They're administered over 18 years. That's way more than 4 or 5 times, jackass. Maybe take a glance at the vaccine schedule for 10 seconds before complaining about the vaccine schedule.
I also, and we've already done this, we want no mercury in the vaccine. We want no aluminum in the vaccine. The MMR, I think, should be taken separately. This is based on what I feel, the mumps, measles, and all the 3 should be taken separately.
Aw, can't remember what the R stands for, moron? It's rubella. Why should they be taken separately? Care to rationalize that? Of course you won't. And I love when idiot anti-vaxxers whine about mercury and aluminum in vaccines and then immediately pivot to the MMR vaccine, which has no mercury or aluminum in it. So there's no need to talk about how thimerosal is not the same as elemental mercury, or how it was proven to be completely safe, or how it was pulled from childhood vaccines in 2001 purely due to public panic as a reaction to disinformation, or how aluminum-based adjuvants are not the same as elemental aluminum, or how they've been proven to be completely safe, or how they represent a negligible amount of aluminum compared to the amount of aluminum already present in the human body. None of that matters, since the MMR doesn't have those ingredients anyway. This dumbass watched a couple YouTube videos full of lies, forgot most of what he heard, and is trying to give us the gist of them anyway. Pathetic.
Hepatitis B is sexually transmitted. There's no reason to give a baby that's almost just born hepatitis B. So I would say wait till the baby is 12 years old and formed and take hepatitis B.
Yeah, babies don't have sex. Why would we inoculate them for something you can only get from having sex? Because that's wrong, dumbass. Hep B is transmitted through infected blood and other bodily fluids, so among many other routes, it spreads through perinatal transmission, meaning from mother to infant at birth. In most of the world, this is actually the primary route of transmission, and it can lead to chronic infection and serious liver damage. Mothers can have the virus and be asymptomatic, the vaccine is completely safe and effective, and there are plenty of other more unusual ways for the virus to be transmitted, so everyone is at some level of risk. And there is no reason whatsoever to avoid this vaccine.
Finally, to help reach the ultimate goal of ending the autism fever, the NIH will be announcing 13 major grant awards from the Autism Data Science Initiatives. And to be honest with you, to me, that's the least important. It's not even a money thing at this point. There's so much money.
Yeah, I mean, you have all that money you saved from cutting billions of dollars of research that would have saved lives, so why not waste it on pretending to research some imaginary bullshit you pulled out of your ass that will help precisely nobody? Great leadership.
When the alternative is that nothing bad can happen, let's do it now. I was just saying to Bobby and the group, let's do it now. Nothing bad can happen. It can only good happen.
Nothing bad can happen. It can only good happen. It can only good happen. Remember when we thought Bush Jr. was the dumbest president in history?
Parts of the world are going through, and I will say there are parts of the world that don't take Tylenol. I mean, there's a rumor, and I don't know if it's so or not, that Cuba, they don't have Tylenol because they don't have the money for Tylenol, and they have virtually no autism, okay? Tell me about that one.
Cuba has paracetamol. Sometimes they have a shortage because the Cuban healthcare system is experiencing an acute crisis with shortages of essential medications, largely due to U.S. sanctions. Cuba also does have autistic people. Any discrepancy between reported rates with those of other countries are due to, you guessed it, underreported prevalence, thanks to less access to diagnostic resources and public awareness. Stop spreading rumors, Donald. You're not a soccer mom. You're the fucking president. Act like it. Okay, now it's Bobby's turn to humiliate himself.
Historically, NIH has focused almost solely on politically safe and entirely fruitless research about the genetic drivers of autism. And that would be like studying the genetic drivers of lung cancer without looking at cigarettes. And that's what NIH has been doing for 20 years.
Yes, only politically safe research, also known as science-based empirical research rooted in reality, as opposed to your wild goose chase for some nasty toxic goo that magically changes a person's entire neuroanatomy. No, Bobby, there is no equivalent to cigarettes when it comes to autism, because autism is not a disease. It's an inborn neurological condition. That carcinogens cause cancer doesn't mean there must be a parallel with everything else that humans experience. It's not outrageous to suggest some environmental factor that could be influencing brain development in utero and contributing to autism, and it is generally agreed upon that such factors do exist, which complement the genetic basis of the condition. But to point to one substance as the main cause without convincing evidence is irresponsible and idiotic.
As a result, we don't have an answer to this critical question, despite the cataclysmic impact of the epidemic on our nation's children. We are now replacing the institutional culture of politicized science and corruption with evidence-based medicine.
There is no cataclysmic impact, and there is no epidemic. You're just an idiot who doesn't know what those words mean or what autism is, let alone how it is diagnosed. You are the politicized science and corruption, and you are specifically replacing evidence-based medicine. Everything you say is the precise opposite of reality, and it's hard to gauge the degree to which you are aware of that fact because you're a fucking maniac.
First, HHS will act on acetaminophen. The FDA is responding to clinical and laboratory studies that suggest a potential association between acetaminophen use during pregnancy and adverse neurodevelopmental outcomes, including later diagnosis for ADHD and autism. Scientists have proposed biological mechanisms linking prenatal acetaminophen exposure to altered brain development. We have also evaluated the contrary studies that show no association.
You're breezing past a lot of key information there, Chief. Which studies suggest this association? What's the mechanism exactly? And you've evaluated all the studies that contradict the ones you're citing? What did that evaluation turn up, dickbag? Since you're deliberately evading these specifics, I'll cover them for you. The two studies are Nurses' Health Study 2 and the Boston Birth Cohort. Two studies, both of which were not large enough to be conclusive, whereas dozens of more robust studies show no connection. NHS-2 involved 8,800 children and did not properly control for confounding factors, such as underlying health issues of the mothers and other medications. Compare that with something like a 2024 Swedish sibling study in JAMA that followed 2.5 million children, including sibling pairs, where one was exposed to acetaminophen in the womb and the other was not. This is a critical element of control that limits confounding factors, given that the siblings have the same mother. Studies of this scope and rigor never find any association with autism or ADHD, so we can point out how Bobby cherry-picks two less rigorous studies to get the conclusion he wants, while ignoring the much larger pile of more rigorous research that contradicts it. We can point out how he makes literally zero attempt to justify this behavior or justify ignoring the larger studies. We can also point out how even if a correlation were found, which it hasn't, it would not equal causation. And despite his claim that causative mechanisms of action have been substantiated, no they fucking haven't, which is why he won't even bother expanding on that claim. Does this mean pregnant women should be guzzling acetaminophen pills haphazardly? No, people shouldn't do that with any drug under any circumstance. Does it mean pregnant women should avoid antipyretics when they have a fever, which is proven to be detrimental to fetal development? No, take the fucking Tylenol. Get your fever down. We know that fever is bad during pregnancy and that it should be reduced.
Furthermore, thanks to the politicization of science, the safety of acetaminophen against the risk of neurodevelopmental disorders in young children has never been validated.
No, it has, in all those much larger and more robust studies you're ignoring.
Prudent medicine, therefore, suggests caution in acetaminophen use by young children, especially since strong evidence also has associated it with liver toxicity.
Yeah, that's true. Any substance can harm you if you take too much of it, and if you take too much Tylenol, like way more than you're supposed to, it can cause liver damage. So don't abuse Tylenol. That people shouldn't be taking huge amounts of Tylenol all the time is not equivalent to telling pregnant mothers that it can cause autism. That's a ridiculous false equivalency.
One area that we are closely examining, as the president mentioned, is vaccines. Some 40 to 70% of mothers who have children with autism believe that their child was injured by a vaccine.
Breaking news. Some mothers are stupid. Bobby's anecdotal evidence regarding some mothers making idiotic, baseless claims about vaccines is totally worth more than the entire body of global scientific research, you guys. Unreal.
President Trump believes that we should be listening to these mothers instead of gaslighting and marginalizing them like prior administrations.
Said the gaslighting assholes who are marginalizing the entire legitimate scientific community by spreading and legitimizing pseudoscience while cutting funding to real science and firing anyone who won't comply with their corruption.
Some of our friends like to say that we should believe all women. Some of these same people have been silencing and demonizing these mothers for 3 decades because research on the potential link between autism and vaccines has been actively suppressed in the past. It will take time for an honest look at this topic by scientists.
Nope, not suppressed, just non-existent. And this attempt at accusing scientists of misogyny just because they refuse to promote science denial makes you an even bigger piece of shit than you already were. Speaking of pieces of shit, it's time for Bhattacharya.
Science like this, conducted in partnership with families and physicians, is the best way to arrest and reverse the autism epidemic. Autism spectrum disorder encompasses a very wide range of symptoms, ranging from mild difficulties with social interactions to profoundly autistic children who experience severe disabilities in speech and behavior. Given this wide range of symptoms across the spectrum, it seems certain that there will be a wide range of biological contributors to explaining the cause.
Does it seem certain, Jay? Is it certain that there are a wide range of contributors? If something exists on a spectrum, it has to have multiple causes? How about one cause with varying levels of prominence? No, haven't thought of that? Let's look at a bunch of people with sunburns. Some are just a little burned, some have it a bit worse, and some have it really, really bad. 3 levels of burns, just like autism. There must be multiple causes for the burns then, right, Jay? It can't just have to do with being exposed to the sun for differing amounts of time. What sense would that make?
The sharp rise in the prevalence of autism deserves an urgent response by the scientific community. As Bobby said, the NIH has invested a lot of money to study autism over the years, but the research has not produced the answers that families and parents of autistic children deserve.
What answers do they deserve, Jay? The buffet of lies that this administration is serving up? Is that what they deserve? Is it really?
For too long, it's been taboo to ask some questions for fear the scientific work might reveal a politically incorrect answer.
What the fuck would be politically incorrect about Tylenol causing autism? You're acting like you're proposing that being around black people gives you autism. It's a fucking drug. There's nothing political here except for the politics that you jerks are promoting. An atmosphere of delusion, disinformation, and panic.
Because of this restricted focus in scientific investigations, the answers for families have been similarly restricted, often pointing families to behavioral therapies that don't work for every kid, or suggest non-modifiable genetic factors as the cause. But genetics alone can't explain such a sharp rise in autism prevalence over just a few decades, as the president said.
Well, for the 100th time, there is no sharp rise in autism prevalence, only diagnoses. So I'm sorry, it is genetics. And you're crapping on behavioral therapies, which are massively helpful in aiding autistic youth. Great job, asshole. Speaking of assholes, it's time for Marty Makary.
Mr. President, this is the start of a historic shift in medical culture. This administration is working together to ask big questions about why our nation's children are getting sick so fast.
Yeah, it's the biggest shift we've ever seen, from respectable scientists doing respectable science to the most disgraceful roster of science-denying asshats that modern society has ever seen. It's a circus sideshow. Why are kids getting sick so fast? Well, they weren't, but they will now, thanks to the policies of this administration. I wonder what they'll all say when that starts happening. Probably Obama's fault.
And if you've seen a kid with autism, with severe autism, it's hard to watch. Kids get frustrated, they get angry, they can be crying because they want to speak and they can't speak. It's hard to watch.
And what percentage of autistic kids are like that? And what does high-functioning autism look like? And how does pointing at the existence of severe autism substantiate any of your bullshit claims? These are all rhetorical questions, since I know for a fact that you don't know any of the answers.
Today, the FDA is taking action to update the label on acetaminophen and sending a letter to all U.S. doctors letting them know about the risks in pregnancy. We now have data we cannot ignore.
No, we have no conclusive data. We need more research without a political agenda, since it's an exceptionally complex problem that will take decades to address properly. You're just desperate for a simple solution to a complex problem because you made an empty promise to your constituents. Forcing a change on Tylenol labels is just an empty gesture to make it seem like you're doing anything important, instead of just wasting enormous amounts of taxpayer dollars to dig up turds and present them to real doctors as though they should be grateful for them.
A study out of Hopkins actually showed that treating a fever can prolong the duration of illness in a young kid. Maybe that's because a fever is a body's natural way of ridding an infection.
Holy shit, this asshole went to medical school? First of all, a fever can be dangerous, especially in infants, but more importantly, why can't these jerks get their story straight? Why are you talking about Tylenol as administered to a child? Are we talking about embryonic development or not? Your whole thing is supposed to be that Tylenol is bad for pregnant mothers because the brain of the fetus is developing. It's probably wrong, but it could at least be regarded as a plausible proposition without looking at all the data that contradicts the claim. Can't you at least be consistent with your bullshit narrative? Every time you pivot to Tylenol being administered to children, you're just making it even more clear that there is zero substance to your rhetoric. Are you saying that a 10-year-old child can take Tylenol and magically become autistic? If not, then what the fuck are you saying?
When my wife was pregnant and delivered our son a few months ago, they pushed her to take acetaminophen for a low-grade fever. She said no, and then they looked to me and I said, absolutely no.
New way, Jose. Get those dirty pills away from my wife. And guess what? After she didn't take Tylenol, our kid isn't autistic. So Tylenol causes autism. Case closed. What a chode. Speaking of chodes, it's time for Dr. Oz, the piece of shit quack who lied on TV a bunch to make money. Hawking miracle cures and bogus supplements made this fraud rich, so now he's here to save American children for only 4 easy payments of $19.99.
The FDA, based on NIH research, is approving prescription leucovorin for treatment of autistic children. The aggressive approach, and it is aggressive, demanded by the president and by the secretary, have already identified risk factors and opened the door for the first FDA-recognized treatment pathway for autism.
Leucovorin does not treat autism. It treats folate deficiency. Some autistic people have a co-occurring condition called cerebral folate deficiency. This drug treats that, and inconsistently, from a handful of weak studies that did not properly evaluate safety. That is all. If it helps anyone, that's great, but this drug does not in any way address the underlying cause of autism, and no drug ever will, because drugs can't change your brain structure. Leucovorin does not meet the standards for FDA approval, and the administration is just ramming it through anyway. This is nothing but false hope from a panel of clowns.
The fivefold increased prevalence of autism over the past 25 years demands a rapid response. The average clinician, researcher, we spoke to many, thought it would take 5 years to get this data. Parents are unwilling to wait 5 years. The president is unwilling to wait 5 years for these results. So the president and the secretary are acting today with this tri-agency move.
Again, there is no fivefold increase of autism prevalence, and you're point blank admitting to rushing a drug to market without proper testing. Great work. Anyway, now it's time to let some random clueless moms talk, because hearing sob stories about the difficulties of raising children with autism isn't manipulative in any way, and it totally validates all the lies they just told, am I right? We're going to skip all that because it's genuinely pointless. Speaking of genuinely pointless, Trump gets back up and rambles like a fucking lunatic, reiterating all the same crap he already spewed over and over and over again, and fumbling it just as badly the second time around.
I just recommend strongly that you don't use Tylenol. Don't take Tylenol. Don't take it. Don't take Tylenol. If you're pregnant, don't take Tylenol.
But it's all justified.
You know, I'm just making these statements from me. I'm not making them from these doctors, because when they talk about, different results, different studies, I talk about a lot of common sense, and they have that too. They have that too, a lot.
That's right. Trump, the mega genius, doesn't need studies or knowledge. It's all common sense. Everything in science is common sense, you guys. Or actually, it's the precise opposite, since virtually nothing in science would qualify as common sense. It's common sense that everything revolves around the Earth, and yet it doesn't. We figure that out by gathering data. There's nothing about the behavior of molecules, or the nature of the fundamental forces, or anything else in modern science that can be judged by common sense. That's not how science works, and anyone who doesn't understand that is a science-illiterate moron. But just deciding what he wants to be true and relentlessly referring to it as true is what got this jerk into office, so he sure as shit isn't going to stop now. Medical science runs on controlled studies, statistical analysis, replication, and peer review. It advances by rejecting the notion that one person's intuition can somehow outweigh empirical data. But Trump likes to go with his gut, no matter how bloated and grotesque it becomes. How could that go wrong?
Don't take Tylenol. There's no downside. Don't take it.
Dr. Trump says there's no downside, except, of course, in cases where extending a fever during pregnancy results in miscarriage or birth defects. That's quite a downside. And again, because this piece of shit is shouting this so emphatically, there are pregnant women who will refuse antipyretics, and these bad things will happen. When you lie about medical science, people get hurt, and none of these assholes give a shit about it.
And you know, we have something else called favored nations, where I'm going to be reducing drug prices by 1,000%, by 900, 600, 500, 1,200. We're going to be reducing drug prices at levels never seen. It's called favored nations.
Hey, dumbass, it's physically impossible to reduce something by 1,000%. If you reduce it by 100%, it's gone. Reducing the cost of anything by 100% would mean that it's free. So what the fuck is 1,000% reduction? You'll give it away for free and also give them 10 times the cash value of the drug as a keepsake? Donald, you genuinely are so fucking stupid that it blows my mind. People in the future will look back on this time and marvel at how the American people let such a bloated, brain-dead hick into the Oval Office.
Because there are a lot of stupid people in this country running things.
Unreal. Let's hit the Q&A.
First, I'm curious as you look at the trend lines,
Yeah.
how much of this is the causation of acetaminophen and how much is sort of better diagnosis, doctors, researchers having a better understanding of what is on the autism spectrum?
Do you want to do that? Sure, go ahead, Rob.
That's one of the canards that has been promoted by the industry for many years, that it's changed diagnostic criteria, better recognition. But there's been study after study done of that completely debunks that.
That debunks what, you fucking tool? Are you saying that diagnostic criteria have not changed? Because yes, they fucking have. Make it good, Bobby.
One of them by the Mind Institute at UC Davis, University of California. But also it's just common sense. Because you're only seeing this in people who are under 50 years of age. If it were better recognition or diagnosis, you'd see it in 70-year-old men. I've never seen this happening in people my age. I've never seen a case of full-blown autism, and that means profound autism. I want to be very careful. Head-banging, stimming, toe walking, nonverbal, non-toilet trained. I've never in my life seen a 70-year-old man who looks like that.
So you cite a random singular study and refuse to elaborate in any way, and then you jump on the Donald Trump common sense bandwagon, which is useless when you're a fucking idiot without enough common sense to see that this is all just changes in diagnostic criteria. But you guys, Bobby doesn't know any old autistic people, and he knows everyone in the world, so there are officially no old autistic people, except for the 1.5 million American senior citizens with autism, along with all the elderly who are undiagnosed, because when they were kids, that wasn't a thing that happened. Fuck you, Bobby.
There's a statement that was put out by the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, and in their statement, they write, acetaminophen remains a safe, trusted option for pain relief during pregnancy, and that's at odds with what you said and with what many of the experts say. How do you clear up this confusion?
That's the establishment. They're funded by lots of different groups. And you know what? Maybe they're right. I don't think they are.
They're the establishment? You're the fucking president. You're the establishment. They're funded by lots of different groups? Is that supposed to be an argument? Research has funding, so it's wrong because I say so? Real science is corruption, but your fake science is virtue. How shocking.
So, Mr. President, you said that there is no reason to give newborn babies hepatitis B vaccines. But hepatitis B can be contracted not just through sexually transmitted diseases. It can come from needles to open wounds. So when you say you feel, is that appropriate to be telling?
I think it's absolutely appropriate. I think they should wait till they're 12 years old. Yes, please.
Mr. President,
Way to just blow right past that question, dickbag. Yes, the insane, unjustifiable recommendation I'm pulling out of my ass is totally appropriate because I say so. Now shut up, next question. Anyway, that's all I can stomach. These morons will slap some meaningless labels on Tylenol, a bunch of pregnant women will avoid it when it's medically necessary, which will result in miscarriages and birth defects, autism prevalence won't change one fucking iota, and they'll all pat themselves on the back for a job well done. Health authorities in the EU, Canada, and the UK have already invited their citizens to ignore the FDA's recommendation, and international experts have chimed in, condemning this news as scientifically unjustified. The FDA has officially been compromised. An institution once safeguarding the public from corruption has now become another mouthpiece of this ridiculous administration and its anti-science crusade. It's difficult to process the level of dishonesty and corruption that we are witnessing. How did it get this bad? What is the end goal? Is it just intentional confusion? Do they genuinely want people to die? Still trying to distract everyone from the Epstein files? I can't wrap my head around every last move and the motives for them. All I can do is point out how egregiously wrong they all are and how we know that. Since it's all I can do, I'll keep doing it until Trump starts throwing American-born citizens in jail for things they say. Once that happens, I'll either shut the fuck up or I'll move to another country and shit on him even harder. But that's a decision for another day. So that's it for Trump, RFK, and the rest of the circus sideshow. What sort of stunt will they pull next that will require this kind of commentary? We'll just have to wait and see. Until next time.